Flexibility is everything. You just have to do what it takes to achieve that objective of making successful customers. As you start to get sort of, I'll call it one foot in the success mode, you start to put in processes and standards and, start to standardize behavior in a way that you can scale, because you need to be able to do things at a, higher frequency. And so as you continue to move along that continuum, you see your need for flexibility changes. It's a different way. You're working towards maintaining that spunk or that ability to adapt to changing business needs as a startup.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? The word of the year may be flexibility. When we look at flexibility at work, we want to make sure that we understand what does it take to keep the culture aligned, keep customers satisfied, keep them really getting the value that they came to us for. And we want to make sure we're hiring and retaining the best talent. Flexibility at work is going to be a very big conversation across our organizations. And so I thought we'd have that conversation with the CEO of a very fast-growing company. We're talking with OneStream Solutions, where we are going to look at flexibility at work with them. Tom Shea really shares some of the way he looks at flexibility, the way he understands it within his office. They have over 900 employees. They've been on the Inc. list 6 times, and it continues to change and evolve. But one thing is constant. He wants to make sure that the customers are getting the value that they came here for. And the solutions that they have continue to evolve to meet that demand. And they have to create flexibility at work to attract the best talent, to retain that best talent. And it's different across departments. One of the things you'll learn inside this interview with Tom is that he understands that it's going to be something that he has to be flexible about. And the pun is intended there, because you want to make sure that you are being able to hear what people are saying and move in a new direction. And sometimes that's what's required in today's world. When you think about this, all the things it takes to be the strong leader that you are and to drive the company forward, you've got to be willing to look at yourself and reflect on where are your shortcomings? Where are your blind spots? This is one of the things it's hard to do for yourself, but I help leaders do this all the time, and I help them create a game plan to move forward. If you are thinking about what's next for your leadership and how to evolve forward, I want to make sure that you know that you can come to me. We have an absolutely free conversation to talk about what's next for you, and that is exactly what I'm here to do for you. If you go to genehammett.com, you can schedule your call. We'll get on there and talk about what is getting in the way of what you want. I can help you get more clear about the next steps. I promise not to sell you anything. I do this because I love to serve. If you're an audience member, you're listening to the first episode, or maybe you've listened to 10 or many more, I want to make sure you know that I'm here to help you be the leader that your team deserves. If you want to get that game plan, just go to genehammett.com. Now here's the interview with Tom. Tom, how are you?
Good. How are you, Gene? Thanks for having me.
I am fantastic. Excited to have you on the podcast. I've already let our audience know a little bit about you and what we talk about today, but I'd love for you to talk about the company. So tell us about OneStream.
OneStream is a company that's involved in helping large, complex organizations turn their data into information. We really exist to help a company as they're recording data on a daily basis, activities that are happening all over. How do you take those data points and turn them into actionable insight for your business, with the real focus on financial intelligence? So the idea that eventually everything makes its way to a financial statement. And so our vision is to create a platform to do that and allow companies to get, increasing value out of our business as the demands on them change over time.
You've made the Inc. list many times before. In fact, it's not your first company, but also that you've been on this list 6 times with this one company. What are you most proud of besides growing?
I think the thing that I'm most proud of would be the idea that we've done it our way. We bootstrapped, we worked hard, and we did it one successful customer at a time. And that happens, and I say we because that happened through our culture and our employee commitment to making each customer successful, and then taking that success and leveraging it into the next success. And that affords you the ability to sort of do things your way. So I'm really proud of that, and that way means in a way that the entire customer base, employee base believes in.
I love the fact that you talk about we, and because let's be honest, you're not on the front lines anymore. 900 employees. You've got a critical role as the company grows, but it takes a team to really create this kind of winning attitude and serve the clients the highest level. When you set out to do this, what was the real intention behind building this team?
Well, this company is sort of a 2.0 for a product called CPM or a collection of products called CPM. And when we thought about building this team, we thought the way that we went about in the thesis for this company was to say, if we come up with a really great product, we understand this because of our experience in the market, will we be able to attract the best and brightest people from this industry, from the people that we met from our sort of prior company and our time in industry that have made their names in this, this space, in this technology space that we're in. That was always at the heart. We knew that we could build a great product, but we needed these great people to turn it into the company that it could be and get it to the most possible customers.
I think we could take a lot of different directions of this. And I know we did a lot of research on the company before we invited you on. One of the things that you see is a strong force inside of how you guys have grown and been successful is having a flexibility inside your culture and the way you approach things. I know you can be too flexible. So, kind of where do you draw that flexibility line?
That's a great question. Well, it depends on the life cycle. So as a CEO, if you really need to be conscious of where you are in the business's life cycle. And what I mean by that is when you're in that early sort of, I always put it in 3 stages. Are you in survival mode? When you're in survival mode, flexibility is everything. You just have to do what it takes to achieve that objective of making successful customers. As you start to get sort of, I'll call it 1 foot in the success mode, you start to put in processes and standards and, start to standardize behavior in a way that you can scale because you need to be able to do things at a, higher frequency. And so as you continue to move along that continuum, you see your need for flexibility changes. It's a different way. You're working towards maintaining that spunk or that ability to adapt to changing business needs as a startup. But as we've evolved to, 900 plus employees, you start to see we need processes. So it's a delicate balance, and you always have to perceive where you're at in your life cycle and be making adjustments that way, to reflect where you're at as a business.
So here's the big question. If you are the person that's leading this company, and I know you've got, executive team behind you that's probably strong and playing at a high level, but what are you doing specifically to drive flexibility at work?
The number one thing, well, I have to bring up COVID because that was the ultimate test, right? When you think about the need for flexibility, it's being aware of sort of how employees are feeling and then adjusting your perception. So the first thing is, to drive actual flexibility in the company is to say, we need to kind of meet people where they're at, because again, you have to look at the demographics of your employees and you have to kind of think, I've got young people that are working here that a lot of their social interaction is being in person. I've got, families that some appreciate that they could be home with their children and not commute. And so you have a whole different sense. So what does flexibility mean? Flexibility to a young person means I get to come into the office when I want to, regardless of COVID. Flexibility to a parent means that I get to stay home and not drive in. So the idea here is to over communicate that we're trying. Number one, we're not perfect and we're not going to make everyone happy all the time. Number two, we're trying to make sure that we can meet your needs and still be successful as a company.
You just said the word over communicate. And I think through COVID, a lot of people struggled with now what's the new cadence of communication? And I had said the same things. In doubt, over communicate because of what's going on and just unsureness of the future. But a lot of people have resistance to over communicating. So how do you kind of look at that?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at, we have all hands meetings, and we typically pre-COVID would have them maybe twice a year or once a year, all hands. We have communication formats and events and things where people would be together. But when COVID hit, we realized, well, a lot of those other opportunities to interact with employees are gone. So let's have a very strict cadence, move to quarterly all hands meetings, which you could argue that's about the right cadence to try to get everyone together. But the way that I react to it is you could feel, if you're in touch with your organization, you could literally feel the anxiety building. And in the absence of filling in the gap for individuals on what was really happening around COVID and around flexibility, you could see that employees and customers or whoever would start to fill those gaps in for you. And so the whole concept, when I say over communicating, it's maybe right size communicating. And if you don't know the answer to, the really important thing was in the first calls, I came and said, I'm worried just like all of you. I don't know what's going on with COVID, but I'll tell you, this is what we're going to do, A, B, and C, and we'll keep you updated and rest assured that, we're going to be flexible and look out for your well-being. So I think it's having a connectedness to the organization. If you are connected, you will feel the need to communicate.
Now, Tom's been talking about over communicating. communicating. And I really understand the pressure that this puts on leaders of organizations. You don't want to have to repeat yourself, but here's the thing. Sometimes we do have to repeat ourselves. Sometimes we have to make sure that our words cannot be misunderstood. And so you have to err on the over communicate side of that. You can't under communicate and expect for things to be exactly the way you want them to be and have the standards and expectations of the organization, the customers, and all that be aligned. You want to make sure that you are okay with this over communication. Maybe you say the words, I've said this to you before, but I want to make sure it's really clear. And you say them over and over and over because people will remember what you say. Now, you don't want to say them, patronizingly. You want to make sure that you truly are communicating in a way that moves people forward. Maybe you're telling different stories that get to the same point. Maybe you're telling client successes that stress why you're communicating or why we're doing this change. Over communication usually is a fear that's inside the head and it causes resistance. I want to urge you to look at that and say it just takes a lot to reach different people and it takes different modes of communication. So make sure that you don't fall into that pattern that I'm over communicating. Let me just back off here. You want to make sure that you err on over communication. If you're going through some changes and you want to align people to a deeper level, just do it in different ways and become an effective communicator. If any of this is confusing to you, I'd love to have a chat about what's next for you. Just reach out to me anytime. Now back to Tom. I want to go back to flexibility because I think that the core of this is what I heard you say was really tuning into what people have in front of them, how they see flexibility. A young person will see it differently than someone who has kids or someone who has an aging parent. How are you tuning into that with 900 people? Are you doing surveys or are you doing some other ways of connecting with them?
We definitely rely on surveys. That's one way. We also have a lot of affinity groups and a strong, different groups and participation, a strong diversity effort. And so just trying to make sure that, especially as we saw all the uncertainty really that there was socially in 2020, we really tried to make sure that we were listening and trying to make sure that we had the right information about how people were feeling so that we can adjust our system, our processes, our events, and our structure to sort of make sure that we are learning and then adapting appropriately. In addition, it has a big impact on your sort of office and real estate strategy, right? Because you start to think about how do you collaborate? Because part of it is learning the water cooler knowledge that you used to get, you don't have anymore. So it is a challenge. To your point, and surveys only get you so far. You need in person to really look someone in the eye and get a read on how they're feeling.
Given that you have data across 900 employees, and it's always kind of changing. What about this surprised you? Anything that you could share with us?
I think what surprised me is I guess I did start to think of, I didn't account for the differences in the way that a young person would think about the company or somebody who was, running a family.
Okay. And when you think about the things that surprised you, how did you guys respond? I'm sure you went to your team and said, okay, this is what the data looks like. The interesting thing is you're a data company. You understand how to create insight out of data. So now I'm asking you, instead of doing it in a financial way, what kind of insights were you able to action for your team?
A lot of the insights that we did, again, some of the surveys that we did just by plotting where people exist, because a good portion of our company was already remote during this, right? So to start, you think of sales and consultants, they're typically on site. So a lot of this COVID and this whole process made us, helped us be a little bit more analytical about how we should be growing the business, how we should be promoting flexibility, what our vision for our office would be in the future, and what it would mean to enable collaboration for different people at different offices. So instead of a single monolithic headquarters approach, multiple collaboration centers, we were lucky that being a smaller in the sense of we haven't created a massive real estate footprint yet. We were about to build a big building, literally right when COVID hit, we were going to build a headquarters, and we kind of pulled that idea and said we should adopt a little bit more of a WeWork structure. The concept of nice offices in more cities, enabling sort of a common theme and try to transport our culture to more places rather than having the central sort of magnetic pull to a corporate headquarters. And so I know analytically the numbers helped us figure out that would be the only way that we were going to get the collaboration that we needed, given the new way of thinking that we see happening with COVID, the new way of approaching work.
That's interesting. I've seen that happening across some of my own clients about rethinking the way we look at headquarters and the way we look at office space. I appreciate you sharing those details. Something you said earlier, really, I want to go back to, Tom, and that's that's this. You want to attract the brightest and the best in your industry. And I know that you guys have been hiring through this. Now that you have this flexible approach and maybe there's some new things, what are you seeing in, requests from new hires as it relates to flexibility?
Well, when you think of flexibility, it's really two ways to think about it. It's because of COVID now, ways that we used to think about how we would hire, say, engineers. We wanted engineers to be in the office and learn by sitting next to someone else. But now you realize you're engineers. So the first way is thinking about how do we attract people? The second is, what about people trying to attract our employees now? Because everybody can work from anywhere at this point in certain positions. So the way that we think about employees, there's really just this expectation when you go to hire somebody new now, it doesn't matter necessarily what the position is, that they are, a viable candidate if that they have the skill match. There's no more geo to that. And so I think that expectation is the biggest change across the board. And thinking about that both from, wow, the candidate pool's larger for me now because I'm not thinking about specific geolocation for an employee, but also my employees are a target for others because, if we're not doing the right things to make sure that they're happy and wanting to stay here, there's no geo boundary for them anymore either. So it's really twofold.
I want to start wrapping us up with this one concept is a lot of leaders like yourself have struggled with how do we maintain culture in the flexible world? So what are the 2 or 3 things that you're focused on to maintain the culture and really try to create the culture that's different than if you were all in one building?
The number one vehicle that we found for this was the pivot to the new sort of collaboration center office structure, because you can't replace in-person sort of whiteboarding sessions and water coolers. So we have to figure out, but that again, it almost goes to the demographic. There's another demographic element to that. And instead of saying, here's one size fits all for the company, there's different departments that have different levels of collaboration and need. And so we're really thinking about what would that look like for the engineering collaboration requirements when we're innovating on the product versus an administrative or finance level of collaboration for that type of team and on that side of the business. So we're really trying to distill that down to a departmental level decision and then foster that through these new offices in a way that you come into an office. These offices have neighborhoods. They have standardized, approaches where you understand that this is a shared neighborhood. These are the residents that live in this office, and you should feel empowered at any one of the, any office that you go in. You should feel empowered to just walk in there and feel like you're at home.
Now, Tom is just talking about some of the challenges in culture in this new world. I want to make sure that you understand that, yes, there are very specific challenges. One of them is we're going to be limited in face-to-face meetings. And when you do have face-to-face meetings, you'll have this connection together that you didn't have before because people are excited to see you and the energy will be amazing. Now, as you are able to get more people together, maybe you have big companies and you've got to get 50 or 100 or 300 people together or 1,000. You're going to be able to do that eventually. But here's the thing. You've got to make sure that you are engineering and intentional about ways to bring people together, even if you can't be face-to-face. If you've got to celebrate successes of teams and clients and all of the things, make sure you're doing this in unique ways consistently, and you do it in a way that brings people together and feel that energy as best they can. Because you can say that, it's always better in person. Yes, it is. But you can always say that, well, let's find a way to do this when we're not in person. Let's find a way that makes this work for now. That's my 2 cents on this. Always think about how you can be intentional about really maintaining the culture that you want. Align it to the results that the company is striving for. Now back to Tom. I appreciate you sharing that detail because it is a struggle, I think, for a lot of companies. One final question for you, Tom, and this really just goes to the heart of your own style of leadership. What has had to change as you are leading this new flexible organization and really focused on creating the unity across this company? Can you pinpoint anything that has changed or shifted in your own approach to leadership?
I just think it's the main thing that's changed for me is the recognition that not only do we have the pressures of growth, which you're adding so many employees, which means you have less. Even pre-COVID, I would have had less face time with those individuals, less opportunity to meet them and sort of share what it means to be part of this or really be an evangelist of our culture. You couple that with the remote aspect of COVID, so you're compounding this into a twofold problem. So what I've it's that communication and it's it's that appreciation when we do get a chance to talk to employees and taking the time to try to let them know that, hey, when this clears up, I want to meet you. We want to be together. So for me, I think it's just being transparent and authentic, and that there's still things that aren't working the way that we want them to in terms of our ability to collaborate, but we're trying to get there. You're appreciated. Please hang in there. So what I've learned is just make sure that you're honest with people when you don't have every answer. Not that I've ever been dishonest, but just be transparent. People will give you a break. I think even as a leader, they know you don't have every answer.
Well, I think a lot of people are afraid to open up and say they don't have the answer. I think a lot of CEOs have, pride themselves in their identity is, I know the answer to whatever the problem is in front of us. And what I'm hearing from you, Tom, is as you've grown and as you realize there's challenges that really are fairly complex, especially when it comes to people and now technology and these new things that are pressure of the pandemics and all the changes. You don't have all the answers, but transparency is a really important piece that I've seen across many companies and what drives their success. So I appreciate you putting a spotlight on that.
Yeah, I mean, just one closing comment on that I would say is, what we basically say is, here's what we're thinking. These outcomes are uncertain. Here's our plan. We're going to update you. We're going to follow this plan and we'll update you on it. So you always have to give confidence that you're moving in a direction, but I think you have to also, with the level of uncertainty that we've seen, you have to acknowledge that, I've never lived through a pandemic. I've never run a high growth company through a pandemic, but this is how I see it playing out for us. And I think doing that, you'll maintain a level of respect in the business. And I think people will want to follow you.
That's a good place to end today's conversation. Tom, thanks for being here and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a nice day, Gene.
So I just want to wrap up a little bit. I know Tom's listening into us, but I wanted to just see how I reflect back on what I just heard. Flexibility is not going to go away. In fact, I think it's going to be something that we have to always look at as we're hiring the best people. If you want to attract the top talent, they're going to want some level of flexibility, whether that means coming in the office, maybe it's remote, geo independence. They really are going to require flexibility. And so you want to make sure you're leading a company with that in mind. You're surveying, you're communicating, and you are being transparent where you can be. And it really is important if you want to create a company that will stand the test of time. And you've got to become a leader that can align all of the people together despite the uncertainty in this. And if you're not sure of what your next step as a leader is, I'd love to talk to you about what that is and help you create a game plan. That's what I'm known for. I would love to help you get exactly clear about how to move and evolve as a leader. Because here's what I do know. Even if you have 10 employees, you've got to evolve to get to 20, to get to 100, to get to 500 and 900. I'm sure Tom would agree that it takes a lot of change and grit to be able to become a leader over time of a fast growth company with so many people that are looking to you. So if you want to get a game plan with me, it's absolutely free. I promise not to sell you anything, but just go to genehammett.com and schedule your call. When you think of growth and you think leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.